The weight of betrayal hit Elena Harper like a freight train, her heart pounding as she stared at the email on her laptop screen. Her project, her life's work, credited to someone else. In the dim light of her Brooklyn apartment, surrounded by scattered blueprints and empty coffee mugs, she felt the world she'd built crumble. But then Mia's voice, soft and steady, cut through the chaos. "They can take your work, Elena, but they can't take your fire." Elena was 28, a brilliant engineer with a mind sharper than the steel beams she designed. She clawed her way into Sterling Dynamics, a male-dominated tech firm in Manhattan, where she was the only openly lesbian woman in a sea of suits and egos. Her colleagues whispered behind her back, their smirks laced with prejudice, but Elena didn't care. She had her work, her designs, her vision. Her latest project, a revolutionary energy-efficient system for skyscrapers, was her ticket to proving them all wrong. She'd poured 3 years into it, sketching late into the night, her hazel eyes burning with purpose. It wasn't just a system. It was her soul translated into circuits and code. Mia Alvarez, 30, was the opposite, calm where Elena was fire, a public relations specialist with a knack for reading people. They'd met at a tech conference 2 years ago, when Elena's sharp wit and Mia's warm laugh collided over a shared disdain for pretentious panelists. Mia, with her wavy black hair and eyes that seemed to hold the world's secrets, became Elena's anchor. Their relationship wasn't just love. It was a partnership forged in late-night talks and shared dreams. Mia saw Elena's genius when others saw only her defiance. The trouble started 6 months ago. Elena's project, codenamed Aurora, was a game-changer, a system that could cut energy costs in high-rises by 40% while reducing emissions. She'd presented it to her team lead, Greg Voss, a man with a smile as slick as his gelled hair. "This is big, Harper," he'd said, his tone too smooth, his eyes avoiding hers. Elena should have known then. But she trusted the process, trusted the company she'd given her all to. She was naive. The email that shattered her came from Sterling's CEO, announcing Aurora's launch under Greg's name. Elena's designs, her late nights, her breakthroughs, all credited to him. Her name wasn't even mentioned. She sat frozen, her hands trembling, as the words blurred on the screen. They hadn't just stolen her work. They'd erased her. Mia found her like that, curled up on the couch, the laptop glowing accusingly. "Elena, talk to me," Mia said, kneeling beside her. Elena's voice broke as she explained, her anger spilling out in jagged pieces. "They took everything, Mia. Everything I built." Mia's hand found hers, warm and grounding. "They didn't take you," she said fiercely. "And they didn't take us." The next morning, Elena stormed into Sterling Dynamics' glass-walled headquarters, her leather jacket a stark contrast to the polished suits around her. She demanded a meeting with Greg, her voice cutting through the receptionist's protests. In the conference room, Greg leaned back in his chair, his smirk infuriatingly calm. "You're overreacting, Harper," he said. "This is a team effort. You're young. You'll get your chance." "You stole my work," Elena shot back, her fists clenched. "I designed Aurora. Every circuit, every line of code, it's mine." Greg's eyes narrowed, his tone dripping with condescension. "Prove it," he said. "Without evidence, you're just a junior engineer throwing a tantrum." Elena's heart sank. She hadn't kept backups of her early drafts. Why would she? When the project was stored on Sterling's secure servers. Greg knew that. He'd planned it. The realization hit her like a punch. This wasn't just theft, it was sabotage. Back at their apartment, Mia was waiting, her eyes searching Elena's face. "What happened?" she asked, pulling Elena into a hug. As Elena recounted the meeting, her voice cracked with frustration. "I have nothing, Mia. No proof. They've locked me out of the system." Mia's jaw tightened. "Then we fight smarter," she said. "You're not alone in this, Elena. We'll find a way." Over the next week, Elena and Mia became detectives in their own lives. Elena scoured her old emails, searching for any trace of her work, screenshots, notes, anything. Mia, with her PR expertise, started digging into Sterling's public records, looking for patterns. They discovered Greg had a history of taking credit for others' work, but no one had ever challenged him. The company's culture rewarded loyalty, not truth. One night, as they sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by papers, Mia found something, a time-stamped email Elena had sent to herself from a personal account, containing an early Aurora schematic. It wasn't much, but it was a start. "This is your lifeline," Mia said, her voice trembling with hope. "We can use this." Elena looked at her, the weight of the past week lifting slightly. "Why are you doing this, Mia? This isn't your fight." Mia's eyes softened. "Because you're my fight," she said. "And because no one gets to dim your light." Their plan took shape. Elena would rebuild Aurora from memory, documenting every step to prove it was hers. Mia would use her connections to get the truth out, bypassing Sterling's PR machine. It was risky. Elena could lose her job, and Mia's reputation could take a hit, but they were in it together. As they worked, Elena felt something shift. The betrayal still stung, but Mia's belief in her was a lifeline. Late one night, as they pored over code, Elena reached for Mia's hand. "I don't know what I'd do without you," she whispered. Mia smiled, brushing a strand of hair from Elena's face. "You'd still be a badass," she said. "But I'm glad you don't have to find out." Elena's fingers flew across her keyboard, the glow of her laptop screen casting shadows on her determined face. She was rebuilding Aurora from scratch, line by line, in their cramped Brooklyn apartment. Mia sat beside her, cross-referencing Sterling's public statements, her brow furrowed as she hunted for cracks in their armor. The days blurred into nights, coffee cups piling up like evidence of their defiance. Elena's early schematic was their only proof, but it was enough to fuel her. She worked with a ferocity Mia hadn't seen before, her hazel eyes blazing with purpose. "I'm not just rebuilding it," Elena said one night, her voice low. "I'm making it better." Mia admired her, not just for her brilliance but for her refusal to break. Sterling had underestimated Elena, assuming she'd crumble under their betrayal. But Elena was a storm, and Mia was her shelter. Their partnership was their strength. Elena's technical genius paired with Mia's strategic mind. Together they were unstoppable. But Sterling wasn't idle. Greg, sensing Elena's defiance, began tightening the noose. Elena noticed her access to company servers was further restricted, her emails monitored. One morning she found a formal warning in her inbox, citing unprofessional conduct, from her confrontation with Greg. It was a warning shot, meant to scare her into silence. Instead, it lit a fire. "They're trying to bury me," Elena told Mia, her voice shaking with rage. "They think I'll quit." Mia's eyes flashed. "Then we hit back harder," she said. "I've got a contact at TechTrend, a journalist who loves exposing corporate dirt. If we can get her your story, it could change everything." Elena hesitated. Going public was a gamble. Sterling was powerful, with deep pockets and deeper connections. If they failed, Elena's career could be over. But Mia's hand on hers, steady and warm, reminded her what was at stake. This wasn't just about Aurora. It was about her right to exist, to be seen, to be valued. They met the journalist, Sarah Klein, at a quiet cafe in Greenwich Village. Sarah was sharp, her questions cutting through the noise. Elena laid out everything: the stolen project, Greg's lies, the company's culture of silencing anyone who didn't fit their mold. Sarah's pen moved furiously, her eyes lighting up with the scent of a story. "This could be big," she said. "But I need more evidence. Something undeniable." Elena's heart sank. The schematic was a start, but it wasn't enough to prove theft. She needed access to Sterling's servers, where her original files were stored. But getting in would mean breaking every rule and risking everything. Back home, Mia paced the apartment, her mind racing. "What if we don't need their servers?" she said suddenly. "What if you can prove Aurora's yours another way?" Elena frowned. "How? They've locked me out." Mia grinned, a spark of mischief in her eyes. "You're not just an engineer, Elena. You're a hacker. You built Aurora. You know its code better than anyone. What if you can show it's yours by exposing something only you would know?" Elena's mind whirred. Aurora's system had a unique signature, a hidden line of code she'd added as a personal touch, a nod to her late mother, who'd taught her to dream big. It was a tiny detail, buried deep in the system's architecture, something Greg wouldn't have noticed when he stole it. If she could access a live demo of Aurora, she could reveal it. The problem was getting access. Sterling was showcasing Aurora at a tech expo in 2 weeks, their big reveal to investors. If Elena could get into that demo, she could prove the system was hers. But the expo was invitation only, And Elena was persona non grata at Sterling. Mia, however, had a plan. Her PR firm had connections with the expo organizers. She could get them in not as Sterling employees but as press. It was risky, but it was their best shot. "We'll need disguises," Mia said, half joking. "And a lot of nerve." Elena laughed for the first time in days. "You're insane," she said, pulling Mia close. "And I love you for it." They spent the next week preparing. Elena refined her rebuilt Aurora, ensuring it was flawless. Mia worked her contacts, securing press passes under fake names. They practiced their cover story, perfecting every detail. The night before the expo, they lay in bed, the city's hum filtering through their window. Elena's hand traced patterns on Mia's arm, her voice soft. "If this goes wrong, we could lose everything." Mia turned to her, her eyes fierce. "We won't. Because we're doing this together." The expo was a glittering affair, held in a massive convention center in Midtown. Elena and Mia slipped in, their press badges dangling, their hearts pounding. Elena wore glasses and a blazer, her hair tucked under a cap, a far cry from her usual leather jacket. Mia, poised as ever, guided them through the crowd, her smile disarming anyone who looked too closely. Sterling's booth was a spectacle, Aurora's name glowing in neon. Greg stood at the center, basking in stolen glory, pitching to investors with a confidence that made Elena's blood boil. She gripped Mia's hand, grounding herself. This was their moment. The air in the convention center buzzed with excitement, but for Elena, it was electric with tension. She stood at the edge of Sterling's booth, her heart racing as she watched Greg demo Aurora to a crowd of investors. Mia's hand brushed hers, a silent reminder. They were in this together. Elena's plan was simple but audacious. She needed to access the demo system, find her hidden code signature, and expose it in front of everyone. The challenge was doing it without getting caught. Sterling's tech team hovered nearby, and Greg's eyes scanned the crowd, as if sensing a threat. Elena adjusted her glasses, her disguise feeling flimsier by the second. Mia, ever the strategist, had mapped out the booth's layout. The demo laptop was connected to a large screen, projecting Aurora's interface for the crowd. If Elena could get to that laptop, she could run a diagnostic that would reveal her signature, a line of code reading, "For Mom," always buried in Aurora's core. It was a long shot, but it was her only shot. Mia leaned in, her voice low. "I'll distract them. You get to the laptop." Before Elena could protest, Mia was gone, weaving through the crowd with a reporter's notebook in hand. She approached Greg, her smile disarming. "Mr. Voss, I'm with TechTrend," she said, her voice loud enough to draw attention. "Can you walk me through Aurora's development process?" Greg faltered, his ego pulling him toward the spotlight. The tech team turned to watch, leaving the demo laptop momentarily unguarded. Elena's pulse surged. She slipped behind the booth, her fingers trembling as she plugged a USB drive into the laptop. The drive contained a script she'd written to search for her signature. If it worked, the code would display on the big screen for all to see. The script ran, the screen flickering. Elena held her breath, her eyes darting between the laptop and the crowd. Mia was still talking to Greg, her questions sharp, keeping him off balance. Then the screen lit up with the words, "For Mom, always." The crowd murmured, confused. Greg's head snapped toward the screen, his face paling. "What the hell is this?" he barked, pushing through the crowd. Elena yanked the USB drive out and stepped back, her heart pounding. She caught Mia's eye, and Mia gave a subtle nod, time to go. But Greg was faster. He grabbed Elena's arm, his grip tight. "You," he hissed. "You think you can humiliate me?" Elena pulled free, her voice steady despite her fear. "I'm not humiliating you, Greg. I'm taking back what's mine." The crowd was watching now, investors whispering, phones recording. Mia stepped forward, her presence commanding. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice clear. "This is Elena Harper, the true creator of Aurora. That code on the screen? It's her signature. She built this system and Sterling stole it." Chaos erupted. Greg shouted denials, but the evidence was undeniable. Sarah Klein, the journalist, was already there, her camera rolling. Elena's chest tightened. Done it, but at what cost? Security was moving in, and Sterling's PR team was scrambling. Mia grabbed Elena's hand, pulling her toward the exit. "We need to move," she whispered. They slipped out a side door, the cool night air hitting them like a wave. Elena's legs felt weak, but Mia's arm around her kept her steady. They ducked into an alley, catching their breath. "Did we just do that?" Elena asked, half laughing, half crying. Mia grinned, her eyes shining. "Yeah, we did. And it's not over." They hid out at a friend's apartment, watching the fallout unfold online. Sarah's article hit TechTrend's website within hours, detailing Elena's story and the expo incident. Social media exploded, with Justice for Elena trending. Sterling issued a vague statement about internal investigations, but the damage was done. The truth was out. Elena knew it wasn't over. Sterling would fight back, and Greg wouldn't go down quietly. But for the first time in weeks, she felt hope. She looked at Mia, curled up beside her on the couch, scrolling through posts supporting Elena. "You're incredible," Elena said softly. Mia looked up, her smile soft. "We're incredible," she corrected. "You fought for your truth, and I'm just proud to be in your corner." The next morning, Elena got a call from Sarah. "You've got allies now," she said. "Other engineers from Sterling are coming forward. They say Greg's done this before. You've started something big." Elena hung up, her mind racing. She hadn't just exposed Greg. She'd exposed a system that silenced people like her, women, queer people, anyone who didn't fit the mold. But the fight was far from over. Sterling's lawyers would come for her, and she needed to be ready. Mia, sensing her unease, squeezed her hand. "What's next?" she asked. Elena took a deep breath. "We keep fighting," she said. "I'm going to finish Aurora me way. And I'm going to make sure no one else gets erased." The fallout from the expo was a wildfire, and Elena was at its center. Her Brooklyn apartment became a war room, filled with laptops, legal documents, and supportive messages from strangers online. Mia was her rock, organizing their strategy while Elena prepared for the legal battle ahead. Sterling's response was swift. They filed a lawsuit against Elena, claiming she breached confidentiality by accessing their system at the expo. It was a scare tactic, but it worked. Elena's savings were dwindling, and the threat of losing everything loomed large. Yet every time doubt crept in, Mia was there, her voice steady. "They're scared, Elena. They know you're right." The online support grew, with engineers and activists rallying behind Justice for Elena. 2 former Sterling employees, both women, contacted Elena with their own stories of stolen work. Their courage fueled her. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for everyone Sterling had silenced. Elena and Mia met with the lawyer, Rachel Kim, who took their case pro bono after reading Sarah's article. Rachel was fierce, her sharp mind cutting through Sterling's claims. "They're bluffing," she told Elena. "Their case is weak, but they're banking on you backing down. We need to countersue for intellectual property theft." Elena hesitated. A countersuit meant going all in, exposing every detail of her life, her relationship, her identity. She'd spent years navigating Sterling's hostility as the only openly lesbian engineer, and now the world would judge her too. But Mia's hand in hers was a reminder. She wasn't alone. They filed the countersuit, demanding recognition for Elena's work and damages for Sterling's actions. The media frenzy intensified, with outlets picking up the story. Elena's face was everywhere, her story dissected on talk shows and podcasts. Some called her a hero. Others called her a troublemaker. The scrutiny was exhausting, but Mia kept her grounded, reminding her why they were fighting. Meanwhile, Elena worked on her rebuilt Aurora, refining it in secret. She wanted it to be perfect, not just to prove her worth, but to show the world what she was capable of. Late one night, as she debugged code, Mia brought her a cup of tea, her eyes soft. "You're building more than a system," she said. "You're building a legacy." Elena's throat tightened. "I just want to make things right," she said. "For us, for everyone they've hurt." Mia kissed her forehead. "You already are." The first court date loomed, a cold January morning in Manhattan. Elena stood outside the courthouse, her breath visible in the air, her heart pounding. Mia stood beside her, her tailored coat a stark contrast to Elena's leather jacket. They were a team, their differences their strength. Rachel met them at the steps, her briefcase bulging with evidence. "We've got this," she said, her confidence infectious. Inside, Sterling's lawyers were a wall of suits, their arguments polished but hollow. They painted Elena as a disgruntled employee, exaggerating her unprofessional behavior. But Rachel was relentless, presenting Elena's schematic, the expo footage and testimonies from former employees. The hidden code signature for Mom always was the centerpiece, undeniable proof of Elena's authorship. Greg took the stand, his charm faltering under Rachel's cross-examination. He stumbled over questions about Aurora's development, unable to explain the signature. The courtroom buzzed, the tide turning. Elena squeezed Mia's hand, hope flickering. But Sterling wasn't done. They produced a new witness, a former colleague of Elena's, Mark, who claimed she'd been difficult to work with, implying her accusations were personal vendettas. It was a low blow, playing on stereotypes about women, about queer women. Elena's anger flared, but Mia's steady gaze kept her anchored. After the hearing, Rachel was optimistic. "We've got them on the ropes," she said. "But they'll keep fighting dirty. We need to be ready." That night, Elena and Mia sat on their rooftop, the city skyline stretching before them. The weight of the trial pressed on Elena, but Mia's presence was a balm. "What if we lose?" Elena asked, her voice small. Mia turned to her, her eyes fierce. "Then we keep going. You're not just fighting for Aurora. You're fighting for every person who's been erased. And I'll be with you every step." Elena leaned into her, their breaths mingling in the cold air. "I don't deserve you," she whispered. Mia laughed softly. "You deserve everything, Elena Harper. And we're going to get it." The trial stretched into weeks, each day a battle of wills. Elena sat in the courtroom, her hands clasped tightly, as Sterling's lawyers tried to dismantle her credibility. But Rachel was a force, her arguments sharp and unwavering, and the evidence, Elena's schematic, the expo footage, the code signature, stood firm. Outside the courtroom, the world was watching. Justice for Elena had become a movement, with protests outside Sterling's headquarters and petitions demanding accountability. Elena's story had struck a chord, resonating with anyone who'd ever been overlooked or erased. She felt the weight of their hopes but also their strength. Mia was her constant, her voice of reason and her spark of courage. When Elena doubted herself, Mia reminded her of the lives they were touching. "You're not just fighting for you," Mia said one night, as they lay in bed, the city's lights filtering through their window. "You're showing people they can fight too." The turning point came when another engineer, Priya, testified. She'd worked with Elena at Sterling and had seen Greg take credit for others' work. Priya's testimony was damning, detailing a pattern of theft and discrimination. The courtroom was silent as she spoke, her voice steady, her words a mirror to Elena's pain. When Priya stepped down, she met Elena's eyes, a silent nod of solidarity. The jury deliberated for 3 days. Elena and Mia spent them in a haze, alternating between hope and dread. On the final day, they stood outside the courthouse hand in hand as the verdict was read. Sterling was guilty of intellectual property theft. Elena was awarded full credit for Aurora, along with damages. Greg was fired, his career in tatters. The crowd outside erupted in cheers, but Elena felt strangely quiet. It wasn't just a win, it was a reckoning. She turned to Mia, tears in her eyes. "We did it," she whispered. Mia pulled her close, her voice thick with emotion. "You did it, Elena. You changed everything." The aftermath was a whirlwind. Elena's rebuilt Aurora was picked up by a rival company, Ecotech, who offered her a lead role to develop it. She accepted, not just for herself but for the chance to build something honest, something hers. Mia took a job with a nonprofit, using her PR skills to advocate for workplace equality. Their apartment, once a war room, became a home again, filled with laughter and plans for the future. But the real victory wasn't the job or the money. It was the impact. Sterling's culture began to shift, with new policies to protect employees. Other companies followed, spurred by the public outcry. Elena's story inspired a wave of lawsuits, as others came forward with their own truths. She'd started a movement not by choice, but by refusing to be silenced. One evening, months later, Elena and Mia stood on their rooftop, the city glowing below. Elena held a blueprint of the new Aurora, now in production. "This is for Mom," she said softly, her fingers tracing the design. "And for us." Mia wrapped her arms around her, her voice warm. "And for everyone who comes after you." Elena smiled, her heart full. They'd fought a system and won, not just the one in the courtroom, but the one that tried to dim her light. She was Elena Harper, the only lesbian engineer in the company, and they'd stolen her work but never her system. Her system was her courage, her love, her truth. And with Mia by her side, it was unbreakable. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.